My sack is always full of presents.
It's full of presents, I bet.
But if you, you know what? I'm gonna take a little back in time to young Rico Lamitte. You know what I did after college, after getting hurt training for the NFL? The only thing that my young dumbass thought the future held. And those scholarship stipend checks stopped coming in. And knowing that my family did not have the funds to keep me afloat in that cold-ass Chicago winter back in '06, I started selling weed.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Ukraine is looking a lot like a 22-year-old Rico right now.
Real trap shit.
Oh, boy.
It's been a year and 10 months now since Russian forces launched an invasion by land, air, and sea on Ukraine. Unfortunately, as we fast approach the Eastern European conflict's second anniversary, the international community's once nearly unanimous support for Ukraine's victory is beginning to wane. Until recently, the U.S. has been Ukraine's biggest backer, with the Biden administration seemingly writing an endless amount of blank checks, sending all its spare planes, tanks, and you'll still see a ton of Ukrainian flags and American social media bios posted by believers in performative justice on any given social media platform. But as we head into another election year, Bidenomics, whatever you want to call that shit, Bidenomics not really showing much love for the everyday U.S. citizen. It's beginning to look like good old American money well is about to dry up. But you know what? According to Ukrainian lawmakers, they are voting to legalize the medical use of cannabis on Thursday after activists and supporters called for the step in order to treat millions of people, including soldiers wounded in the war with Russia. We get a round of applause for Ukraine getting a little bit of medical cannabis support there. How about it? The bill was backed by 248 lawmakers. Senior lawmaker Yaroslav Zherlaniak wrote on a Telegram messenger, selling or supplying cannabis for recreational use would remain a criminal offense. But he's going to be pushing for medical, and the bill will be pushed into Parliament. Said medical cannabis was needed by 6 million Ukrainians, including cancer patients, civilians, and post-traumatic stress disorder, and wounded soldiers. The war launched by Russia in February 2022 has killed tens of thousands of people, destroyed settlements, and driven millions of people from their home. The fighting rages on with no end in sight. But you know what? At least they have weed as medicine now. The bill must be signed by President Volodymyr Zelensky before it becomes law. And it would come into force 6 months after it's officially published. Opposition lawmaker Yulia Tymoshenko, prime minister from 2007 to 2010, had staunchly opposed the legislation, arguing that recreational drug use would proliferate in Ukraine. The legislation would impose strict controls on the production of medical cannabis, including 24-hour video surveillance accessible by police producers who would have to be licensed. And medicine containing medicinal cannabis would only be available by electronic prescription under the bill. Well, you know, it's pretty draconian times in Ukraine, and I just hope that the people that need the assistance of our great patron plant now can find a little bit of peace with that. I'm Rico Lamitte, dope as that on the street. Now, I'm not a big expert in international geopolitical strife, but I
can help you with that.
I'm a big supporter of medical and recreational cannabis. So big ups to Ukraine. Congrats on that, and I hope the people get the relief that they need. What do you think about this, Jason?
I mean, I think this is great for Ukraine. I mean, this isn't anything that we didn't already know that was in the works and in happening already. And shout out to our field agents out there in Ukraine that that send us all these great Tigran that send us all this great information out there. But I will tell you this: I'm wondering why it's only an electronic recommendation or prescription, whatever they want to call it, out there. I'm wondering if they're having a shortage of triplicate forms out there. What do you think, Dr. T? What do you think about this electronic only recommendations or prescriptions for Ukraine?
Well, that's progressive, at But this is always an interesting topic for me because of historical perspective. Going back to the times when Napoleon troops got introduced to cannabis during their imperialistic escapades into North Africa, and realizing that the government back then also did not want the troops to start using cannabis, possibly because it made them think that war is a silly thing. It's a ridiculous thing, and they tended not to follow orders. That's my interpretation, by the way, not necessarily the historian's interpretation, but I think it's a pretty interesting idea. Cannabis during war. Of course, people are going to need cannabis during war because it does help with all the trauma from war.
I wonder if there's going to be like any military aid that just drops crates of marijuana out in the sky, like all the federal prosecutors believe marijuana comes from.
I doubt it.
Was it? I think it was a story from World War I when it was like the British troops like dropped like a ton of like super duper heavy cigarettes on the opposing forces and got them all loosey goosey and then wrecked shop on them. I think I was like reading that, or I saw that like on a historical documentary I was watching like last week. They like dropped a bunch of cigarettes like on them. They thought they were regular cigarettes, but they're like super duper packed ultra nicotine cigarettes, and the opposing forces just chilled the fuck out and they got slaughtered.
I wonder too is what are all of the associated ailments that they are going to allow for the recommendations or prescriptions of cannabis in their country?
How about you live in a war-torn country?
PTSD.
I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that. But I mean, your article didn't touch on it.
Yeah.
So the legend has it that Napoleon issued the ban on hashish specifically because the soldiers were too stoned, but it was not made illegal until after his campaign in the area came to an end. It was actually one of his generals that banned it, and wasn't so much to protect French citizens against becoming too stoned to be of use to society, but more high colonialism, exert control over what was popular in the common culture in Egypt and Syria, and drawing that line and pitting people against each other, much like we did here in the U.S. with making opium you smoke illegal. But of course, what white women regularly drank as laudanum was just fine, as long as you were a white woman drinking it and not a person of color smoking it. So, there's some deep stuff, and I'm actually about to unpack that in Africa here in my story, so it's really similar.
I mean, don't we get that here with like all the people that think that
is that tied to the hash assassins?
That was before. That was Syria.
Yeah.
That was many years before. Yeah.
But now, I wonder, Dale, is that tied?
You can only tell me a story about that one time.
Edibles, cannabis consumers, they look down upon people that smoke cannabis. So I wonder if this is just the same thing happening over and over again.
All of them.
Yep.
You're just painting all edibles lovers.
All edible only lovers. Yeah. They look down on people. They're like, I don't want all that smoke in my lungs.
In your binary labels.
Yeah.
Dude.
You're all just a bunch of deplorables if you set fire to anything and inhale it.
Oh,
Heathens.
Yeah. That's right. We're gonna go